feel I was lucky that I did sailing because I wanted to go sailing, and I kind of missed the whole squad thing. It wasn't a big thing. I mean, the youth squad was a big thing, just a few years behind me, really. It was getting going when I was sailing. I mean, Jim was doing a great job, and then it really, that group of, superstars that came was slightly behind, and so we kind of missed out on that. But sailing was all about then crewing for people or helming with people and going racing, and the classes were big. The 14 class was massive for a while. So I know Tom's dad, and but you went sailing, and it was just a huge, big social melting pot of different people that wanted to go racing, and club racing was still a big thing, and doing things like Fedwick was massive in performance boats, not only just in RS800s and stuff. It was pretty interesting times, really. It seemed a much bigger sport back then, and I don't think that's just reminiscing. I mean, there was just lots more people sailing performance boats, whether it be Fireballs, 505s, or the 14s.
Yeah, I mean, people certainly talk about kind of 150 Fireball fleets, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I did a Torquay Worlds in the 14, and it was 146 boats.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's massive.
Why do you think the change? Do you think there's just more dilution in the sport, or do you think it's become relatively more expensive? Or
no, it definitely hasn't become more expensive. Those 14s were super expensive, and Merlin rockets have always been expensive. There's no changes there. I think what happened, my personal view, I think the squads got too strong. The youth squads got too strong. Too much emphasis on training, not enough emphasis on club racing. When you club race, I mean, I was out in Australia for the Moth Worlds, then went over to Sydney for 10 days over Christmas and New Year, and we went to the sailing clubs there, the skiff clubs, that still are functioning businesses and bars and restaurants that have club racing on a Saturday or a Sunday. And I think back to when I was sailing 14s when I was like 20, 21. If you went to a club race, our club racing at Eastbourne was when the two clubs combined, and we'd have big fleets. I'm sure it was the same at Lymington with the Town and the Royal. And you won a club race, it was a big deal. And it was those clubs are all about banter, and it was all about there's a real rivalry between classes within the clubs. Big deal to win, the Cock of the Harbour or something was a big deal. We were lucky enough to win the Cock of the Harbour not long ago. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I was looking down the names on that trophy. It's unbelievable, some of the names on there.
It's in my downstairs toilet.
Yeah, it's not a very pretty thing, is it?
There you go, got Tom Morris on there.
Exactly. So it was just different, and things change. I think there's more emphasis on other things you can do. Cycling, a good example. You can just grab your bike and go. You don't have to wait for the wind to be right. You don't have to. Just easier things to do, aren't there?
Yeah, I think a lot of people also just enjoyed racing because it's fun, not to win, or I guess more importantly, they didn't feel like they shouldn't race because they're not going to win. So the squad focus for years, and I think it's changing now, but it was always about let's find the Olympic gold medalist. And so if you're not on that trajectory,
exercise, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're really not of interest, and you might as well not go sailing. So whereas we sailed against people, and there's still lots of them around. Old guys who've they've bought an RS700 and they say, I used to sail a 505, and as soon as they say that, that quite a lot of them were in that category of people who perhaps weren't the best 505 sailor, but they had a lot of fun in it, and they made up those 100, 150 boat fleets.
Yeah, and I think well, the 8's good for this, isn't it? With the kind of like those Eurocup events, and events become a bit more an adventure, if you know what I mean. It's not just going through the process of do the training, go to the event, get the races in, get the results. It's a bit of travelling, like you're seeing new places.
Yeah, and think the world's
like.
The world's changed so much. I mean, the first time I went to Lake Garda was 1990. I went with Tom's dad would have been there, a whole load of hailing guys, Itchener guys mainly, but and a load of guys from Newcastle, Tynemouth Sailing Club, where the 14s were strong. And we went to Riva Sailing Club, and we turned up at this massive lake. I mean, this is at times, we're talking about we had to get there with a map to drive through Germany with a map. We had to take 6 currencies if you wanted to get fuel everywhere. We obviously didn't. We ringed a couple of countries, Belgium and a couple of other places, we didn't bother with the currency. You had to have Deutschmarks and needed Lira and everything else. It's a big expedition. And you took your small ship's register and you got down there, and the time you were there, it was like amazing. And then you saw this great big lake that no one actually knew anything about, and we got there and there was like no wind at all, a typical morning scene. And we're all like, wow, what a waste of time this was. We come all this way and there's no wind. And someone said, well, what's that? And of course the aura was coming in, and we found Lake Garda, and probably probably the first skiff class that ever went there. And if more importantly for the sailing club, they found this commercial skiff racing that is turned into huge 29er events and 49er events and all the other things. And it was just a match made in heaven, where you can imagine the sort of elated feeling of that week of having a place we could go sailing in 25 knots every day. We paid, I think it worked out at the equivalent of £60 entry fee. That was a lot of lira, but £60 entry fee, and it included everything: free beer, free food, the racing, and as much wine as you wanted to drink. It was just full on. And of course the 14th Fleet back then was into singing every night. It was just an amazing thing. And you come back to work for a rest, and it was just, and nobody knew. There was no way of, there would be a yachts and yachting write-up, a month later or whatever. And it was kind of like I won't say a secret society, but you were just doing this thing in a bubble, and it was just amazing.
Well, I guess you saw that a bit, Luke, with the 4000 when it was sponsored, and that looks like it was a pretty awesome era. When the 5000s and the 4000s.
Yeah, it was kind of I guess best part of the decade on from there. So we were sailing like late 90s, early 2000s, and it was a huge scene and a lot of fun. And I think they kind of the Italian clubs had got the hang of laying on an event like what the 4 teams had discovered. So there's just a huge amount of fun. It was a massive pilgrimage really of British sailors going over to Garda to sail in possibly one of the best, or possibly the best skiff sailing venue in the world. And that really kind of lit our fire, and that was one of the reasons we wanted to come back to the 800, and why the 800s go back to Garda as often as we can, or really every 2 years if possible, current conditions permitting, because it is a fantastic place to sail. And I'm hopeful that the people coming out of 49ers now, 29ers, if they've not been burnt out by the squad experience, and as I said, I think that's changing hopefully for the better, then they'll get many years of fun sailing boats like 800s on venues like that.
Yeah, it's certainly a cool place to go and sail. I wonder if we'll ever get back, and we probably won't get back to that era where you have kind of big sponsored fleets. I mean, what was it really, when you look at the 5000s, was it really big sponsored, everyone, all these teams who seem to be sponsored, or was it really just people doing what we're doing now, making it? It
was exactly the same.
Faking it.
There's a good old bit of video of the 4000s and 5000s out there, and the standard of racing, when you look back on it now, was not to the level that it is now, I'd say, in terms of how well people were sailing the boats. On the other hand, they were pretty big tanks to sail, so take my hat off to anyone who had to go in one. But the sponsorship was kind of window dressing. It made it all seem very glamorous, but really, we've had every bit as much fun sailing in the 800 the first time we went to Torbay in 2016. It's quite a low turnout, and it's one of the best regattas I've ever had, because just everyone was out partying every night. It was just such a good atmosphere, and we had good breeze. We had one of those kind of classic Garda weeks where you turn up and it's a little bit light the first couple of days, and then it builds and builds, and you have an awesome last couple of days. So everyone, even the people who'd gone out there not that practiced, kind of got up to speed and just loved it.
Yeah, I always think Garda's just. I enjoy racing there. I wouldn't say it's my favourite racing venue, but as a place to go, And if I
It's
had
the
a couple of
complete
weeks
package,
spare
isn't
and
it?
I was just going to go and train somewhere, it would be number one on the list by miles. Like, get out on the mountain bike in the morning, sail in the afternoon. It's perfect.
You got too much energy, Rob.
And of course, standing in a nice warm afternoon kind of bar, chatting terrible sailing chat is one of the best places to do that, and it's so congenial to the social side. I think that's clear from what Andy and Luke just said. That is the core of the class wherever it goes, but it's easy to draw that out in Garda, and I think that's why it's a good place to go back to get that event feel. But
yeah, and that really helps because the class is, the sailors in the class is such a broad church of people. I mean, we're in our 50s now. Ralph Singleton, Salson's daughter. There's a whole load of husband and wives, and then there's youngsters who are the first time they've been to Garda and they're like 25. But everyone socialises together. It's there's so few classes that you can do that in. Everyone's super friendly.
Yeah, it's very welcoming.
I just think it's really unusual.
That's what we found when we joined the class. So many people just came over and said, "How's it going?" and gave us tips on setting up the boat a bit more easily, how to sail it. They'd see us swimming around and point out a better capsize technique.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is when the pros do turn up, generally speaking, the amateurs beat them.
It is good when that happens. I remember doing the SB20 Worlds when they're in Torbay and Rob Greenhalgh turned up, and it came down to like the last race between him and Jeff, who was going to win, and everyone in the class just wants you want your guy in the class to beat the pro. Like, even if you like the pro, you just don't want them turning up and stealing the chocolates, do you?
Yeah. Well, the nationals at the RS Games in 2018, when Tom and Guy won very convincingly, there were, I think, 5 members of the British sailing team and their coach all racing. And the
Natural
highest,
world champions, nonetheless.
yeah, highest placed of them was crewing in the boat that came third. So, it is possible. And Tom and Guy hadn't been, sailing their boat for all that long, and it was a 9-year-old boat. It is definitely possible to beat the pros, as long as they don't spend too long practicing.
Pretty interesting. Harvey Hillary stayed at our house over the nationals at Eastbourne last year, and it was pretty interesting. He was a top coach in his day, and he said it was always good to send some of his pros to the 800 fleet for the nationals or Europeans. It was a good way to ground them.
Yeah, because it looks like a boat that should be easy to step into if you're a 49 sailor and wipe the board.
And I thought that was pretty encouraging for a coach to be sort of thinking that along those lines, that actually go and see what it's like, go and have some fun, and actually realise that there's some people that are going pretty fast that don't do Olympic sailing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting way, isn't it? Because I actually don't think you mode it like a 49er upwind a lot of the time. Like I find a lot of similarities between the 8 and the 470, for instance, and the medium stuff. I think the 9er guys don't necessarily get that if they just jump in. They just want to send it upwind all the time.
Well, fingers crossed we see a few more of the FX girls come through, because certainly if you're looking for a skiff fleet to race in the UK that's one design, it's the 800, and those FX girls, they'll all be on the way to equalisation. So from that point of view, they'll be competitive, and they can turn up and race domestically, at Opens with 20 boats, and at Nationals and Europeans with 40. So, fingers crossed we do get a few more of them in the fleet. And it's great to beat them, but also, they're putting their necks on the line, and it's not an easy thing to get into a boat you don't know so well. So I think it's good. If too many lads turn up and beat us, I'll complain. But
Yeah.
Well, it is good to have the pros turn up and give us a benchmark to have a go at.
It makes it mean more when you beat them, doesn't it? It's interesting though that you say that, Tom, because actually, when you think you can buy an 800 at the minute for about 1,500 quid, if you find, like Chris Rybrish's boat, I think cost him certainly sub £1,800, and it's absolutely fine. Like, you'd happily go and do the nationals in it. So That's a lot less than a set of FX sails. So they should all just have an 800 as their training boat.
Definitely.
Go and do some have an 800 as well.
Yeah.
But a bit racing practice.